Hey guys, welcome back to some more AFK Arena. Today we're back over on the YouTube account and we are taking a trip down memory lane, guys. Now overall, in the last 4+ years that we've been playing AFK Arena, we have seen an incredible amount of heroes that were released, but that always wasn't the case. So when AFK Arena came out, guys, we didn't have the Awakened heroes. Even looking at some of the original heroes, we didn't have a majority of things that we do have today, including the addition of signature items. We didn't have the engraving, we didn't have the furniture. Heroes at that point didn't even have tier stones. It was a super basic build with literally just 4 pieces of gear, and of course there's artifacts at that point. So let's go back down a trip down memory lane. Let's take a look at it. All right, guys, now this is something that AFK Inside puts together and I love it. So looking at the very beginning in patch 1.11, that is right, guys, this was kind of the beginning or before this actual patch. AFK Arena was comprised of 12 heroes. That is right, guys, these are the original 12 that we've seen. A lot of utilization within. Astrild is still being used. Rain is still being used in a ton of different places. Brutus has utilization. Leica has utilization, as well as Grez. So it's pretty interesting, again, looking back 4+ years, that we are still seeing utilization in some of these heroes. I want to run through all of these guys because then we are introduced to Nemitsu, which of course was the first support hero to the Mauler faction. And unfortunately, as we go through here, a number of years, you'll see that was the only support hero for the Mauler faction for a number of years. Then of course, Pharrell was utilized, still used today in a lot of PvP formations, because of the crowd control that he has. And then also looking here on 1.3 of 19, that is right, guys, over 4 years ago, Warwick was introduced with the bone breaking ability, still used today in formations, which is really cool to see. Almost, unfortunately, crowd control never really took off with the tanking aspect. Overall, not seeing play today. Then we get into every hero that comes out every 2 weeks, like we have right now. You can see, guys, here, this dropped 4 heroes. That is right, guys. AFK Arena was dropping 4 heroes at a time. So on 3.7, you got 4 heroes. This is when I joined AFK Arena, was this drop. When we got Tassie, Thorin, Thane, and Lucius. As of today, guys, Thorin Cheese is still alive and well. That is the only hero that we're seeing as of right now. And then we get into, of course, patch 1.15, which introduces the Celestials. That is right, guys. This was the first drop of the Celestials with Athalia. There was a whole part of who has them, who does not. It was really a game changer when we got the Celestials. Then we know it was immediately followed by the original version of Aziz, which was the first Hypogean hero that we've seen. So now the Celestials and the Hypogeans were out there. Even looking here, guys, Screg is still used today. When we look at Cirrus, when we look at Folks, not really so much. But Athalia still does have a place. Aziz still has a place. And then, of course, we see the drop of Sophia right here, 5/20 of 2019. Sophia drops with Iran. This creates what will eventually, through time, with the release of Scrath, known as the 5-pull. But Iran actually has the ability to pull in targets into Sophia's Spectral Disruption. This, again, was the very beginning of the 5-pull. Then patch version 1.18 drops, of course, with Baden, with his minions. But the big one in this one, guys, was Nara. Nara was the first hero that could actually break through Brutus's immunity, which was a game changer in AFK Arena. Again, I said this was going to be a big look back down memory lane. And I remember when Nara came, guys, absolute game changer. I still have old videos where we covered these heroes, which again is kind of crazy to think that we've been doing it this long. Now, Kelthar, of course, alive and well in the Thorin Cheese. Hendrik still finds his place every now and then in PvP. Now, Gorvo, Wilder Tower, still used today. Mahira, the Charmazard, still used. I'm in chapter 50 now. Still used in chapter 50. Same with Rowan. Now, my favorite hero, most of you do know, is Rowan. When Rowan was dropped, guys, 7/17 of 2019, he took me at that point from chapter 18 to 21, 22, 23 plus. Just having him at a super basic build, guys. He was one of the absolute most broken heroes that we've seen dropped in AFK Arena. Still used in some places today, which is the same. Then we got the Twins. The Twins, of course, were a game-changing support hero, still utilized everywhere today in AFK Arena, even though they are one of the older heroes. I believe that was the second Celestial that we ever seen. followed by Rosaline with the rise of the Awakened version of Belinda. Rosaline absolutely making a big difference in those formations. Also run within the Mihira comp with the Charmazard to actually get multiple Mesmerize ultimate abilities off, which is very cool. Then we get into the double maulers, guys. You got Cetrana and you got Entendre. They both worked incredibly well for their time. We know Entendre is still being used. Unfortunately, Cetrana at this point, a lot of players were saying that she was going to be the awakened one, which we know at this point it is Sophia. So unfortunately, she is not the one that we're going to be seeing. Then we get Zolrath, guys. Zolrath, again, the second hypo hero that we've seen, followed by Gwen. Gwen, of course, was super damage. And again, look at the timing between here. We thought one hero every 2 weeks was really bad. When it was earlier, guys, we were getting double hero drops every patch, triple hero, even quad hero drops every single patch over and over and over, which again was kind of crazy to see when the game was coming out back in 2019. How many heroes they were pumping into this game was just crazy. And then, of course, Lorzen with the linking, very good for a short amount of time, but still used today. Rigby dropped. No one unfortunately cared at that point. Isolde dropped and Titus dropped. Now, this again was a very big game changer because Isolde had the ability to keep himself alive. And of course, when it came to the Mauler Tower, Titus was the actual only crowd control one that we really had in there, which again made a big difference in the game modes because he had the crowd control. Then, of course, the OG version of Taylene drops. Guys, absolutely game changing right here. She was the first hero that could die in combat and she would resurrect herself. When she resurrected herself, she came back stronger, which again, this was a game changing pivotal moment in AFK Arena. Followed by the next patch, which of course introduced Arthur. Arthur was the first dimensional in AFK Arena that we ever seen. Again, very strong, still used in formations depending on the heroes that you build. Now then we get Khazard. Interesting enough, guys, Khazard was super strong in PvP, of course, but the buff duration extension, when you look at Mihira, this is what kind of put together the Charmazard, which was ultimately called, was the release of the signature items when it came to that plus 30 signature item on Khazard. Really made a game-changing difference. And then, of course, we got Skarath. A couple of these heroes were not super effective until, of course, we got the furniture. When they added signature items to the game, again, a huge impact right there. Changed the dynamic with a bunch of different heroes. When we were released with furniture, that made the utility of Skarath go through the roof. And the 5 pull was born that we're still seeing today with Queen, with Lucretia, with a couple other heroes. Solus, unfortunately, didn't work incredibly well because of the when the power creep, the Floral Spectre actually dies super quick. Then, of course, we had Cecilia, worked incredibly well. Mizalt was a tank that was super hard to deal with because he didn't have much of the crowd control. Oden dropped. Not too many people really considered Oden. He wasn't super good at the beginning. And you'll remember once upon a time we did have the Portal Party. So it was Oden and Pippa together. But look at that, guys. I mean, Pippa is a long ways out. That's what, 7-8 months out before we ever were able to make the Portal Party. But unfortunately, at that point, Oden was not as strong as he is now. Oden was one of the few heroes that actually received a full rework later on in AFK Arena. Oscar dropped, nobody really cared. Yukio dropped. Now, Yukio was the only, and still to this day, the only pay-to-win dimensional hero that you could get. There was no way to acquire him as a free-to-play player, which is the reason why, even if you've been playing, a lot of free-to-play players do not have Yukio. You had to buy him for 50 bucks. That was the only way to get him, but unfortunately not really used anywhere in AFK Arena. Then we got the drop of Saurus. Saurus was incredibly broken, guys. Saurus was the one that replaced Belinda and Shamira. When it came to the boss killing comps, Saurus, at the introduction of the hero, took number 1 in everything. Literally any boss comps, including the guild boss, Saurus was the one to run. Belinda ran in there to actually buff up Saurus, but he would keep the entire team alive and he would crush targets super fast, doing an insane amount of damage at the time. Torn dropped, not really a lot of utility. Same with Inoki, not a utility. Flora came out pretty unique with her fly ability, but again, short of a stall team, never really seen any ground. Nakaruru came out as well. Again, little bit of gameplay when the hero was released, not too big. But then we get, of course, Damon. Damon was the absolute game changer in AFK Arena, and essentially he replaced Shamira for the carry with the signature items, with the build, him scaling. Again, I am in chapter 50. We are still using Damon. Damon still does work incredibly well in formations. And then, of course, Drez came out. Nobody really worried about it. But Ezio was a huge dimensional drop, just for the simple fact he was the one who could insta-kill enemies, which again was something that we had never seen before in AFK Arena. Similar to Taylene, that comes alive when she dies in combat stronger. Ezio had the ability to insta-kill enemies, and which again was a game changer, pivotal moment in AFK Arena. They win, not a huge drive right there. Then we got Lucretia and Zafriel. Now, AFK Arena gave us a free copy of a hero. Most players went with Lucretia. Some did go with Zafriel. Lucretia, of course, still has a ton of incredible utility, even nowadays when you look at the tower, when you look at a lot of different game modes. Zafriel, unfortunately, at this point, has kind of been power creeped out, short of the tower. But then, guys, the biggest game-changing drop that we have seen, Albedo and Ainz came out. Ainz was the one that replaced everybody else when it came to the damage dealer. His skills and abilities just crushed damage so hard, even looking at doing more damage to Saurus. Then, of course, Albedo in there to buff. Today, Ainz still does have a lot of utility. Albedo, of course, used in pretty much every dimensional formation you have as of today. Works incredibly well. And then Pippa dropped, which, of course, Oden Pippa kind of made the portal party, but Pippa is still used in the Thorn Cheese that we do know as of today. Sliding this over a little bit, guys, then we get Silas. Of course, Greyborn support. We have been waiting forever for Greyborn support. Silas comes out incredibly strong in the support aspect. Again, still used today. Has buffs, has immunity, has healing, has damage mitigation, pretty much everything we want to see. Then Mortis comes on the scene. Mortis, of course, a major buffer, which kind of competes with the twins. Running them together hand in hand, you could buff up Ainz, you could buff up Saurus, you could buff up any hero that you wanted to a whole nother level in AFK Arena with his greed ability, making it an absolute game changer. Olna comes out providing the immunity. Again, super important, strong hero that came into AFK Arena. Still used today, but she was awesome when she came out, still continues to dominate. Then we got Joker and Queen, guys. Now this, of course, was the Persona 5 crossover. Joker made a huge splash when he came out, used in a lot of different formations, run together with Gwen, used in PvP, slowly faded out as we seen the power creep continue, and Queen actually didn't get picked up till probably 6-8 months down the road, once kind of both of their viability kind of phased out, fizzled out. She started being worked into the 5 pull, which again works incredibly well. We still see it today. She was also used in a lot of the Cursed Realm when we did have multiple formations in there. Worked incredibly well. Then, of course, Kren drops for the Maulers, guys. Best in slot hero within the faction. Super strong when you look at the heroes that they had been putting out. With Titus, with Inoki, with Drez, he was a game changer. He was the one that everyone raced to build. Again, staple formation in a ton of different places. The Twisted Realm, the Cursed Realm at that point. Respin unfortunately came out, not really much short of a short stint within PvP aspect. And then, of course, Ulard came out with the exact same, not a big thing. And then we went double heroes again, guys. So Peggy came out, again, never found much of a ground. Used in the tower a little bit, but short of that, it does require a significant investment to even get her to work. Raku comes out, and he does an insane amount of damage, guys. Now we have the combination of Raku running in one team, Kren running in another team, both of them being in the best in slot in so many aspects of AFK Arena. Then, of course, Moriel comes out with the Prince of Persia. Again, another double hero drop. Prince of Persia sees a lot of play because of the crowd control aspect where, well, Moriel at that point didn't really have much play whatsoever. Prince of Persia was really the one to build that we ran for a long time. Then, of course, Desira comes out, a second Graveborn support hero, which was huge. So that was, I believe, 2 Graveborn support heroes that we've seen right in a row. Both of them still super effective to this day. Leofric comes out, still never built him. Most players say there's absolutely no reason to. Walker comes out, which is the most confusing hero that we've ever seen because he is Walker the Texas Ranger, but they made him a warrior instead of a ranger. So again, a lot of players were super confused by that layout. Nobody used him. There's not really a big drive. Then we see Merlin, guys, as another dimensional hero. It makes his way into, of course, every single formation we see right now, being a huge damage mitigation buffer. Also has the survivability aspect in there, which is really cool to see. Ty Lee comes out, again, a little bit of utility within the tower. Very short-lived with the damage she puts out, even being fully built. Then we get this wall guy that nobody ever built. Then we get a tank named Hodgkin. Hodgkin overall, guys, a lot of crowd control, but a lot of a buffer. He is really a big buffer versus a tank, which is the reason why we still do see him in formations, is the buffing aspect. Now, Maro, of course, very short-lived with the crowd control, but within the tower, works incredibly well. Zekus, again, a super short-lived hero within AFK Arena. Then we have Granite with the plus 30 signature item. The ability to petrify the enemy, of course, in combination with Lucretia works incredibly well, and crowd control formations. Then we get Leonardo, guys. Leonardo is one of the heroes that gave us the first massive amplification crowd control that we have seen, which of course worked perfectly with Raku and a couple other ones, especially with Ainz. Damage amplification that he provides was incredibly strong. Then we get Mishka. Mishka overall a super solid tank, guys, because of the wolves, because of the crowd control, the shielding, the healing. Mishka is definitely a priority hero. Then we get Halos. Halos, of course, huge, not only in the buffing aspect, but also in the energy regeneration, is still used today in formations. Treznar, unfortunately, has been kind of dropped out of PvP at this point. Was huge because he had the frontal immunity to damage, and also the kind of cheat death when you dismounted him, he'd have an immunity. But again, not seeing a lot of play outside of the towers. Same with Thisu. Thisu overall had a little bit of utility in AFK Arena that was very short-lived. Now, Frampton, on the other hand, still being used today, has seen a pretty decent resurgent because of Matria. Overall, because of that dynamic, works incredibly well, but does require a very significant investment to get him to work. Being fully maxed out is really where you do see him really shine. Then we got Peanut, great addition to AFK Arena, of course, for the damage mitigation, but also does an insane amount of damage as a support hero if you do have her built out. I do like her, and I do use her, again, in a lot of different formations because of that mitigation aspect. And then, of course, version 1.80 is the another game changer, guys. 1.3.22, that is right. This is the release of the first Awakened hero, which, of course, was the Awakened version of Taylene. Everybody loved and still utilized the original version of Taylene. The Awakened version brings the SP effect, which is super broken, yet super expensive within AFK Arena. And then we continue, guys. Scarlet is dropped, and of course, Scarlet starts replacing all of the other heroes in formations. We see her running hand in hand with Saurus, or replacing Saurus in formations at this point. Belinda is out, Shamira is out, Scarlet is in. She is one of the absolute go-to damage dealers, which we are seeing today. Now, Baba Yaga comes out. Her skills and abilities, kind of mixed reviews on her. Again, some players do still use her quite a bit, but overall, there is a RNG factor when it comes to the hero. PvP, she does work incredibly well. I don't see her in very many other places. Even looking at the Twisted Realm and the Cursed Realm, things of that nature. Don't see her again in a lot of different places, but still does have some utility. Now, Fane comes out, of course. Nobody really too worried about him. Didn't really use him very much. Then our second Awakened hero comes out with Aziz. Unfortunately, one of the biggest disappointments that I've probably ever seen in AFK Arena was dropping this Awakened version of Aziz. Not much utility, works the same at a legendary versus having him fully ascended at 5 stars. Still functionality, has the same abilities, which again was super disappointing if you built him. Alero drops, which of course is, I mean, look at this, guys. We're three years down the road into this game. The Maulers get a second support hero, and it is Alero. Talk about an absolute disappointment because of this. It was horrible, and everyone was mad about the drop. Audrey drops, another hero, guys. Cursed Realm used a little bit. Overall, not a lot of utility. Same with Oku. And then, of course, the Awakened version of Thane drops, which is the first one we've seen in the primary 4 factions. Has a lot of damage, but boss fights are kind of the struggle. PvP, absolute god. He works so incredibly well within PvP. It's kind of crazy. He was broken with the wind shear that he has and everything else with the SP effect. But short of that PvP aspect, he was pretty short-lived in other places. Valoris, another hero, very short-lived. Sonya, of course, requires a significant investment to get the damage mitigation she provides, but at this point, not a huge utility. She came out very, very hot. Lilith nerfed her. They actually threw a big nerf with her damage. She was super broken upon release. Of course, they drew it back. Now she's just kind of okay, but even to get her to that level, she does have to be built out quite a bit. Then Anasa comes out. Of course, this is the predecessor or the teacher to the Awakened version of Brutus. Works incredibly well, has the mitigation, has the Brawler's protection. This is a hero that is still, again, used quite a bit today, which I do like to see. Kayleen, kind of the same, has a lot of utility within certain game modes, even used within, of course, the towers, just because of the strength that she has, the crowd control aspect, but overall requires a significant investment. And then Brutus drops. Now, Brutus, of course, still one of the strongest Awakened heroes that we've seen within AFK Arena. Really dominates when it comes to the shielding aspect. When it comes to the Maulers, this was probably the biggest game changer that we've seen within the Mauler faction. Running with Kren together worked incredibly well. And then, of course, one of my favorites, guys, Joan of Arc drops. Joan of Arc provides healing, provides immunity, provides buffs, provides pretty much the full package that you want to see with a support hero. Even provides crowd control when you do have her built out, making her an absolute priority. Then we get into the back end of this wish list, guys. Then we get Orin. Orin, of course, super, super effective, guys, in the Wilder Tower, as well as a ton of different game modes. I recently just took him to E60 engraving. Super effective, guys. Damage went through the roof in the Nightmare Corridor when I built him out. Now, Tarnos came out. Tarnos, ultimately PvP, super duper heavy in PvP. Also works incredibly well in the Celestial Tower. Very short-lived in other game modes. And then, of course, the Awakened version of Solus, our first, and at this time, only Awakened support hero that we've seen. Again, went straight to priority number 1 to build. Super, super effective in every single game mode, utilized in every formation. The power that she brought was, again, just absolute insane. Then we have Geralt and Yennefer come out. So The Witcher, one of the most anticipated crossovers to date. Unfortunately, The Witcher falls kind of flat. I don't use them for anything, literally in any game mode. Yennefer, I still do use in quite a few PvP formations. It still does work incredibly well. But overall, again, the utility for these heroes, Yennefer finding a little bit of place, a couple different places being used. Geralt, unfortunately, is not. Then we get K'Nissa and Rook, guys. K'Nissa and Rook is super, super important to build. The combination works incredibly well. The crowd control, the energy reduction, the chains, it does work really well. And also K'Nissa and Rook is very hard to kill. Again, with the resurgence of the Maitreya combos, K'Nissa and Rook does run hand in hand. Then we got Neve drop. Now, Neve is one of the unique heroes that buffs summoned entities. So when you look at Solus, when you look at Baden, when you look at a lot of different heroes that bring up summoned entities, such as Grez, she buffs the summoner, which again is just absolutely huge. First time we've really seen an effect like that. Then we get Baden, guys. Baden, super impressive. I'm very, very happy with the build of Baden, just because of the crowd control, the support, everything of that nature. Then we pick up Salakai, which of course is the third support hero for the Maulers. Salakai in the tower makes a little bit of an effectiveness. Outside of the tower, he's not used anywhere, and he is simply and immediately overshadowed by the broken abilities that Palmer has to raise not only the crit, but the damage amplification, or the crit amplification, really putting Salakai straight into the shadows right after release was super broken. And then, of course, we get Vithiel, the Chad. Once Vithiel comes out, again, a major, major buffer in AFK Arena. Does an incredible amount of damage, has a lot of survivability, and again, provides a buffing aspect as a tank. So again, they kind of go hand in hand. Mulan drops, which of course, super effective with that crowd control aspect. And then we pull the Awakened version of Belinda, who is still the #1 priority for the Awakened heroes to build an AFK arena. There is not, in my opinion, any other heroes that even touch the damage that she does, guys. It's kind of crazy building an entire formation around one single hero, but the damage she puts out is just through the roof. Then we look at Tamris, of course. He is a huge buffer with the enthusiasm. If you have his furniture built up, if you have the signature item, he can actually stack up to 40% attack rating, which is kind of funny because then we look at Demia in just a minute. Then we get Olgath. Olgath is another hero, guys, doesn't really gain much ground, doesn't find a lot of utility. Then we get Edwin. Edwin, of course, provides a little bit of ground effects, but overall, I think Edwin is going to gain a lot of ground as we continue to see utilization of this hero. We get Matria, which of course is the second hypo hero, which again is just super broken, guys. She revitalizes the hypo formations, including Olgath, including Kanisa and Rook, including Aziz, including pretty much everyone within the faction can run with Matria because of the double buffs that she provides, making her just an broken Awakened hero. Not on the same level as kind of Belinda, but definitely a very, very high viable Awakened hero. Then we get Crescio. Crescio overall, guys, a lot of utility if you haven't built. The 30930 really is super effective. Just got him to a +30 signature item. I got furniture on him. Does well not only in the Mauler Tower, but also Nightmare Corridor, working incredibly well. Then, of course, guys, a massive crossover right here with Rem and Amelia. Both of the heroes have a ton of utility and a plethora of game modes, which unfortunately is not the same when we look at the Witcher combination, but the ReZero crossover was huge. Followed by that, guys, we get the Awakened version of Thalia, which again, super, super impressed with the hero, works incredibly well. Guineas is still making progression, still finding his place. But like I was saying down here, with Tamris being able to 40% buff, right here is Demia that offers a 50% buff. So as we continue to get heroes kind of stronger and stronger, Demia is super broken, super high priority, guys. Even possibly on the same par of building out the Twins and Mortis, just because remember, Demia buffs the entire team, which is huge when it comes to the build. Then, of course, we got our new Wilder hero right here, which, again, gonna have to find a place where she really does fit in. Overall, not super impressed with the skills and abilities they presented. So right now, we're kind of on a pause to see who we're gonna build. But we also know, guys, version 1.119 is going to be the place marker or the holder for that Awakened version of Sophia as we continue our progression. Super excited to see the second Awakened hero that we are getting, so we can just drop in a little photo right here. But the second Awakened support hero that we're getting within AFK Arena, it seems like the skills and abilities that she's bringing are going to be super impressive overall in the build. So, all right, guys, so that'll do it. I love being able to go through and kind of reminisce on all these heroes we have in AFK Arena. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and as always, thank you guys for watching.